Purposely. Your life, God's purpose. Listen at onpurposely.com.
Today, we resume our tour of the Holy Land. We continue to walk by faith together. You and I are stopping by some of the sites my daughter is seeing in the Promised Land right now. She's having the adventure of a lifetime. She's seeing the places that Jesus saw with his eyes, the places he walked with his feet. It is so surreal and so beautiful. I want to tell you that I did have the opportunity to FaceTime with Hannah today, and she looks a little sunburnt and happier than I've ever seen her. Before we make our fifth stop on the Holy Land tour, a little breaking archaeological news on the Bible for Busy People. The Israel Antiquities Authority has announced that the 2,700-year-old Pool of Siloam, which is believed to have been used as a ritual bath by the ancient residents of Jerusalem, will be fully excavated over the coming months. In addition to its significance in Jewish history, this location is also well known to Christians, as it was at the Pool of Siloam where Jesus was said to have restored the sight of a man born blind. And as you may have guessed, this is where we're stopping today, at the Pool of Siloam. Let's gather with Jesus and his followers in John chapter 9, beginning in verse 1. As Jesus was walking along, he saw a man who had been blind from birth. "Rabbi," his disciples asked him, "why was this man born blind? Was it because of his own sins or his parents' sins?" "It was not because of his sins or his parents' sins," Jesus answered. "This happened so the power of God could be seen in him. We must quickly carry out the tasks assigned us by the one who sent us. The night is coming, and then no one can work. But while I am here in the world, I am the light of the world." Then he spit on the ground, made mud with the saliva, and spread the mud over the blind man's eyes. He told him, "Go wash yourself in the Pool of Siloam." Siloam means sent. So the man went and washed and came back seeing. His neighbors and others who knew him as a blind beggar asked each other, "Isn't this the man who used to sit and beg?" Some said he was, and others said, "No, he just looks like him." But the beggar kept saying, "Yes, I am the same one." They asked, "Who healed you? What happened?" He told them, "The man they called Jesus made mud and spread it over my eyes and told me, 'Go to the Pool of Siloam and wash yourself.' So I went and washed, and now I can see." "Where is he now?" they asked. "I don't know," he replied. Then they took the man who had been blind to the Pharisees, because it was on the Sabbath that Jesus had made the mud and healed him. Quick note here, the Pharisees were the religious rulers of the day. They were always picking on Jesus for not following the rules. They were upset every time he healed a person on the Sabbath. Okay, picking it up in verse 15. The Pharisees asked the man all about it. So he told them, "He put the mud over my eyes, and when I washed it away, I could see." Some of the Pharisees said, "This man Jesus is not from God, for he is working on the Sabbath." Others said, "But how could an ordinary sinner do such miraculous signs?" So there was a deep division of opinion among them. Then the Pharisees again questioned the man who had been blind and demanded, "What's your opinion about this man who healed you?" The man replied, "I think he must be a prophet." The Jewish leaders still refused to believe the man had been blind and could now see. So they called in his parents. They asked them, "Is this your son? Was he born blind? If so, how can he now see?" His parents replied, "We know this is our son and that he was born blind, but we don't know how he can see or who healed him. Ask him. He is old enough to speak for himself." His parents said this because they were afraid of the Jewish leaders who had announced that anyone saying Jesus was the Messiah would be expelled from the synagogue. That's why they said, "He is old enough. Ask him." So for the second time, they called in the man who had been blind and told him, "God should get the glory for this because we know this man Jesus is a sinner." "I don't know whether he is a sinner," the man replied, "but I know this, I was blind and now I can see." "But what did he do?" they asked. "How did he heal you?" "Look," the man exclaimed, "I told you once. Didn't you listen? Why do you want to hear it again? Do you want to become his disciples too?" That's really funny. Then they cursed him and said, "You are his disciple, but we are disciples of Moses. We know God spoke to Moses, but we don't even know where this man comes from." "Why, that's very strange," the man replied. "He healed my eyes, and yet you don't know where he comes from. We know that God doesn't listen to sinners, but he is ready to hear those who worship him and do his will. Ever since the world began, no one has been able to open the eyes of someone born blind. If this man were not from God, he couldn't have done it." "You were born a total sinner," they answered. "Are you trying to teach us?" And they threw him out of the synagogue. When Jesus heard what had happened, he found the man and asked, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" The man answered, "Who is he, sir? I want to believe in him." "You have seen him," Jesus said, "and he is speaking to you." "Yes, Lord, I believe," the man said, and he worshiped Jesus. You know, I've got two takeaways from this incredible story in the Bible today. There is so much power in you and I just telling our stories, talking about what Jesus did for you and for me. It's my first takeaway. And the second is I'm thinking about Amazing Grace, one of the most classic hymns written by a former slave trader. And I thought it would be fitting to end on the words that John Newton wrote in 1772. "Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found, was blind, but now I see." That's all of our stories, isn't it? All right, until next time, you are really loved. Thank you so much for listening to the Bible for Busy People. If you need prayer or you're ready to go a little deeper in your faith, we've posted some resources for you in our show notes. We'd love for you to share this podcast with a friend and leave us a review. It helps us reach even more people with the hope of Jesus. This podcast is part of Purposely, a podcast network designed with practical podcasts to help you find and live in God's purpose for your life. Find more podcasts that will recharge you at onpurposely.com.